The biggest issue that I always try and focus on is cryptocurrencies are really not about currency. And the biggest misunderstanding of this whole discussion is the belief that if crypto is not doing a great job of replacing the US dollar, then crypto is failing in its mission. And what I think we'll talk about a little bit today is the idea that most of crypto is about replacing the centralized banking system with networks that allow user control versus bank CEO control. The crypto assets that have prices are more like internet stocks. It's more like you bet on Google if you think there's going to be high internet traffic, and you short Google if you think people are going to go back to the post office, right? But it's not that Ethereum or Ripple or anything else is trying to replace the US dollar. It's trying to replace a system of transmitting value. And we'll talk a lot more about that. So for me, the prices are not that relevant any more than Google's volatility is. And in the early days of Google, that was super volatile.
It generally takes about 25 to 30 years for human beings to adopt a new data transfer technology. Radio was invented in 1890, but wasn't commercially available until the 1920s. TV was developed in the 1920s, but wasn't in homes until the 1950s. Email was invented in 1969, but most of you most likely didn't have an email address until 1997. There is one that I really want to focus on, and that's TCP/IP, which is the internet, for those that don't know. It was developed as a DARPA project in 1970, but it wasn't really commercially accepted until 1995 when it was rolled out with Windows 95. There's another important date, which is 1983. 1983 is when TCP/IP was accepted as the standard protocol for internet development, 13 years after it was created. Well, here we are, 13 years after Bitcoin was created, and we're just now starting to talk about standardization. This is not a coincidence. Adoption at this stage is not a technology problem, it's a human conditioning issue. Every 13-year-old in the United States has only existed in a world where Bitcoin has existed. 3 years from now, every 16-year-old will have only existed in a world where Bitcoin has existed. 16 years old is an important date because it's generally when someone becomes interested in becoming a developer. They are the adoption layer. We here in this room, we're the infrastructure layer. It's our responsibility to create an environment where every 13-year-old American has a framework upon which they can build the next world on. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Our view in the future is you don't have to have this pre-funding, and instead you can use a digital asset to have global liquidity on demand. Now, we build upon a tech stack, an open source technology called XRP. XRP originally was built by some engineers who had seen some of the flaws of Bitcoin and the challenges of scalability around Bitcoin. Where Bitcoin today, on a per transaction basis, it's rather slow and rather expensive. XRP is very, very fast, about 1,000 times faster per transaction and 1,000 times cheaper per transaction. The other dynamic, of course, of correspondent banking is some of the more quote-unquote exotic currencies, exotic corridors have been left to kind of stand on their own. And the liquidity in digital assets could be applied to actually make that much more democratized and a level playing field. Ripple's vision from the beginning really has been to apply these technologies in the same way that TCP/IP and HTTP are the technologies underpinning the Internet of Information. These blockchain technologies will be the underpinnings of an Internet of Value, where we have connected devices, we have connected information that will allow payments to flow. And as Norman was describing, if you're a large corporation moving $100 million, that's one thing. If you're a freelancer working in the Philippines doing design work for a company in London and you want to get paid $30 or 30 pesos, Philippine pesos, that's not a transaction that can easily be enabled. And in fact, for the companies that enable that, they require the freelancer to set up an account, and they don't actually pay it out until there's roughly 1,000 USD sitting in that account, and then they would pay it out.
The use of XRP as a financial asset by sophisticated institutions as a bridging mechanism. So does this hurt or harm? Well, it creates a lot of noise. And, we certainly don't want that much noise, but we're waiting. And for example, this last quarter, the bulk of XRP sales were to institutional investors.
You want to take one? Go for it. The first one's for you. IMF. Do you see IMF holding crypto assets in the future? I did not put that up there.
Remember, I'm from the legal department. I'm supposed to be very conservative about these things. I don't want to go into great details about
Maybe
the
I
IMF.
should take what the IMF is going to do. I think we stunned Ross into silence with that one.
For that to happen, okay, under the current legal framework, some country would have to use a crypto asset as its currency.
Cryptocurrency does not seek to replace currency. It's a bad name. Cryptocurrency seeks to replace banking. But the core things that banks have done since the 1300s, those are going to go away, 100%. And let's just be clear what I mean by that. The reason that we even have banks originated in Italy around the year like 1340, all right? And the reason they originated was because of a set of accounting advances that allowed banks to serve as trusted intermediaries between parties that owed each other money. Before that, literally, I would write you a note and I would promise to pay you money and you'd put the note in your pocket and you'd see if anybody else would take the note. You know, that's why we refer to discounting notes. And then banks arose and it was like, you no longer need to do that. We'll take care of it for you, but you're going to have to pay us to do that. That function of needing a trusted intermediary to maintain ledgers of account to figure out, do I owe Brooks money or does Brooks owe me money? It turns out that function no longer has to be done by human beings. The same way we don't need postal clerks anymore. I can send you an email for free and it's instant and that's just the end of the post office. Sorry, but it just is. That function will go away. What's going to be left for banks is the high value add services, you know, structured finance, investment advisory, you know, all of the things that make a dynamic economy function. We still need people to do that. There's a lot of creativity going on in finance. But the core of banking, the base of the pyramid, the thing that drives most of their revenue, doesn't need to exist. And that's why I say, and I was saying to one of the organizers even before we stood up on this panel, cryptocurrency does not seek to replace currency. It's a bad name. Cryptocurrency seeks to replace banking. Just if you take nothing from this panel but that, that's what you need to understand.
It is my name on the lower left-hand side of U.S. money. I'm also on the board of Ripple, which is XRP. But I want to make something very, very clear. The train has left the station. As far as I'm concerned, whether it's fractional real estate, whether it's art, whether it's NFTs, blockchain is not going away.
Blockchain is here to stay.
One of the challenges of the industry has been to focus on solving real problems for real customers. And Ripple, obviously, from its earliest days, focused on the problem around cross-border payments. That's a point of a lot of friction as measured by speed and cost. And by focusing there, we've been able to have a big impact on that, you know, relatively small piece. But I think over the next years, you're going to see many financial transactions where a middleman sits, a middle transaction, an intermediary. Those will get removed, and we'll use blockchain and other digital asset type technologies to remove that friction. And I think all of society will benefit from improving the efficiency of those systems. I think you'll see that. Certainly, you've seen it in security settlement as an opportunity. The financial transactions around bonds, around derivatives, a lot of these things take a while to settle, and the friction associated actually holds back the industry. Insurance is an industry I think you're going to see touched. Trade finance is an industry that really Ripple, some of our customers have invited us to participate in. And you've seen experimentation around identity in real estate and title management. And these are all examples where I think it's so hard to predict where this will go, in the same way that 25 years ago, when I first got involved in the Internet of Information, I never could have predicted on my smartphone I'd press a button and I'd have a car picking me up minutes later. You know, I think this will permeate lots of different parts of our society.
The macro environment around custody digital assets is expected to be close to $10 trillion by the year 2030. And inevitably, people are going to need a place to store those assets, and safe, secure, and they're going to need to be able to transfer them as well, having good on and off ramps, even a tokenization engine, some of the work Ripple is doing around central bank digital currencies or CBDCs. So we think there's a lot of pieces that come together, and we already had, and I remember when you and I first spoke, I remember being on a call with one of the largest top 10 banks in the world, and a bank Ripple was already working with, and they were asking us about could we help them with their custody. This is prior to the Mickle acquisition, and we weren't in a position to do that. And so when we think about that synergy, the ability to say to that existing Ripple customer, hey, here's a best-in-class, going head-to-head time and time again and winning on the custody level, to be able to bring that product to them, I think is a great opportunity for the two companies together. So